I'm talking to Professor Shaun Micallef from the ANU, the famous evolutionary biologist and comedian. What are you doing these days? Have you got a job?
No, I'm winding down.
Aren't you a huge success?
I'm on a television program at the moment. Can I mention this program?
Please.
I'm on a free-to-air commercial television station called Channel 10. You might have seen it.
10. Yes, my little mate Jamie bought it the other day.
There you go.
My cobber.
There you go. Well, I've had a very rich and full life working for the other Packer on Channel 9 a few years ago.
Yes, of course you did.
And now I'm working for his son, so it's nice that
But
the circle is complete.
that's been a smash hit, your current thing, hasn't it?
It's done very nicely, but it's not my program. I'm just presenting it, and I'm adding a bit of seasoning here and there.
Now, I'm going to be sort of mischievous now. Let's have a chat about your future. You do know, I know you know, that I am totally addicted to the Comedy Central view of the world, to the pincer movement of progressive Jon Stewart and pseudo-Fox Newsy conservative Stephen Colbert.
Well, I'm a big fan myself.
They have, in fact, worked miracles, have they not, in political television?
Let's face it, a lot of the references are very, very, very particular to what's happening in the Huffington Post, for example, and it's not something that necessarily turns up in the Age or the Sydney Morning Herald or the Australian. But despite that, the humour is very rich. You get what's being said. The humour is part of the journey from A to B, rather than being necessarily the joke being the destination. I think that's what I like about it.
That's a very important point. Now, I love the Chaser Boys, but they're not political satirists in that sense. They do funny stuff about politics, but it's not that sort. It doesn't have that sort of analysis in it.
No. There's a process. There's a processing that, and Jon Stewart does it differently from Stephen Colbert.
Yes.
Jon Stewart is probably a little more reactive to the way the media is treating a certain subject. In fact, there's usually two bits. There's the opening section, and there's the one that follows it, and there's the interview. This is traditional for both shows. The first one tends to be about an issue. The second segment tends to be about the reaction or the way the media is treated.
And the issue is usually based on a lot of people with TiVos, with recorders.
Yes.
Who can humiliate a politician speaking today by showing what the silly bugger said yesterday, last year and the year before.
Yes, that's right. Yes,
devastating.
It would be a lot harder these days for... now, who do we revere of our past?
Gough.
Let's say it's Gough,
yeah.
Who could do nothing wrong. And I think the only bit of slightly embarrassing footage that was ever taken of Gough was probably in a film called a film starring Barry McKenzie.
Some vile.
There was a little bit of footage which, and I don't know whether it was
unfortunate. Somebody
had dubbed in. Yeah. Arise Dame Edna. I'm sure it wasn't Gough said that. But anyway, that was the only bit of footage. But these days, of course, if you trip going through a door or you go for the wrong doorknob.
The stuff we found on you, for example.
Really?
Will prevent you having a political career. But it should not prevent you having a political television program. But you did have one of sorts, didn't you? You had an interesting experiment.
I did.
On SBS.
Yes, late night on SBS on a Wednesday.
I couldn't see it because
You're working.
late. Yes.
You got one eye on the microphone you're speaking into.
I actually do this program in the afternoon and pretend that it's live.
I wondered why when I turned up you weren't here. It's amazing that we're having this conversation. I'm just timing it right. But it was a program on the SBS. It was called Newtopia, and it was
called what? Newtopia.
Newtopia.
Right.
Newtopia. I quite like that name. But it took the conceit of it was that Australia was in a perfect position to judge and condemn the rest of the world because we had no vested interest in it. So that was the basis for us. And so I sat at an Australia-shaped desk and spoke about world issues. And I enjoyed the fact that we were talking about world news rather than necessarily just the Australian political landscape or state politics or the 2.5 minutes that it was nice giving a whole program devoted to world news rather than maybe the 30-second wrap-up that you often see in the free
I want you to pretend I'm Oprah and you're on the couch. I want to sort of bounce you around a bit now.
Sure. Tom Cruise style.
All right. What makes you tick? Because you're really a very unconventional comic.
You think?
Yeah.
You think? It's because we have I'm sure we have a mutual admiration of Barry Humphries.
We do.
And indeed, Barry Humphries was me seeing Barry Humphries' show of the Sandy Stone monologues was the thing that prompted me to give up my career in the law and say, right, I'm going to be a comedy writer.
It's interesting that Sandy Stone, of course, so accurately predicted John Howard, just as Edna so accurately predicted Margaret Thatcher.
Yes.
Barry's also involved in this pre-incarnation business, isn't he?
Yes, he is. I think so. I think he's a very rarefied soul.
So you were stimulated to become a comedian by Sandy Bloody Stone.
Yeah, I was. I mean, I'm a big fan of a lot of comedy, and I'm very attracted to comedy for some reason. I don't quite know why that is, but even as a kid, I was drawn to the great slapstick American comics.
You love the Marx Brothers, didn't you?
Love the Marx Brothers. I was also a big. This is in the
Jerry
day,
Lewis.
Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis. I still have a lot of time for. But this is in the day when they used to run Buster Keaton films, when they ran Chaplin and Laurel and Hardy as well. So that the slapstick was looked after. Radio gave me the Goon Show and Much Binding in the Marsh and Itmar and all those wonderful.
So all
shows.
these are sort of threads.
Yeah.
To your warp and weft.
Yeah. So I'm quite happy to clown and fall over. I think that's just as good a laugh as it is to sit behind a desk and play with words. So I enjoy both.
But, okay, let's come back to the book.
Sure.
The fact is the book is exquisitely written. You've taken the cover off. Give us a bloody cover.
I was going to test you as to what it was
well,
called.
There you go. See, John Clark. John Clark says, you didn't ask me for a comment for your bloody dust.
There's no room. There's so many people.
Well, it should be room for me. If Douglas Adams, see, he gets a Guernsey. If Douglas Adams married Alice in Wonderland and they collaborated in crime fiction in Urdu, they might find themselves just off the coast of Shaun Micallef. They should go ashore. It would be an afternoon to remember. Now, that is a great...
It's a lovely quote and very nice of him to do it. And I was a big fan of... I remember listening to the Science Show once and Fred Dagg was on and talking to Robin Williams about Bishop Berkeley, I believe it was. It was just hilarious. It was hilarious. And I'm listening to that as I don't know, how old was I, 14, 15? And then to meet the man and he's...
The great thing about John is his immense generosity of spirit to others.
He's very supportive of...
He's fantastic.
Of youngsters. And I don't class myself as a youngster. He's very supportive of a lot of others.
Well, the reason I quote him is because he might have written this. You know, he does wonderful literary spoofs, doesn't he? Poetic spoofs.
The wonderful, yes, the tennis book.
Dazzlingly good. But, you know, I am astonished just how well written this is, Micallef.
Well, I
promise you really wrote it?
I spell checked it, you know.
Did you?
Yeah, it's good. I try to put the words in the right order.
Yeah. You know, I think it's really good. Have you written other books? I know you pretend you have.
I pretend I have. No, I have actually. I don't regard. I have actually had another published work called Smithereens, which is a collection of pieces. You know, little plays and sketches and pieces I'd written for various newspapers and magazines. But I don't regard that as a piece of writing. That's a bit of a cheat, I think. And that's not the work of an author. That's the work of an anthologist.
I suddenly realised I would have seen you first in that collage program. What was it called? The sketch
on Channel 7.
Yeah, years ago.
Full Frontal?
Yeah, Full Frontal.
Really? You would have watched Channel 7?
Of course I watched Channel 7. And as a matter of fact, when I was chair of the Film Commission, we set up a fund to encourage that sort of program, and John Clark was the...
Is that right?
Was the head of the program.
Well, I have you and he to thank for that.
Well, you know, but I had you to thank because it proved that money well spent.
Well, it's very interesting now, though, because I've been talking to the ABC about getting another sketch show up, but unfortunately...
No, do a political program.
Well, I think I might have to do that, because with a sketch program these days, apparently, it doesn't qualify as narrative drama. It qualifies as light entertainment, and unfortunately the sort of budget parameters for light entertainment are things like Spicks and Specks, which doesn't lend itself to sketch comedy.
Oh dear.
Isn't that interesting?
It is interesting.
You should plug that loophole.
Yes, well, I've got bad news for you.
What?
I agree with something you say here in a PR handout. The book, although it's really good, won't win the Miles Franklin.
You don't think so? No. Well, see,
why won't it?
Well, it's not about Australia. It doesn't inform us about the Australian psyche. So I don't care. You know, I don't want the Miles Franklin, quite frankly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're not going to bloody well get it. Good on you. That was Shaun Micallef. He's got a lovely book called Preincarnate. Sorry, a novella.
Yes.
A novella. And while I sit here and Josh with Professor Micallef from the ANU. You've got to stick around now for the news on Radio National, which includes a discovery of the origin of the human soul. See you later. Thank you, Shaun.
Thank you, Philip.
That was lovely.
Yes, I enjoyed it very much.
I've got a pen. I don't have authors coming off it.
Oh, okay. You've got a red pen there.
Well done.
Just suggest that you maybe.
Turn it.